You know, the French Revolution was all about liberty, equality, and fraternity, right? But what happens when a fight for freedom goes horribly, horribly wrong? Well, that's what we're talking about today. We're diving into one of the most intense and honestly shocking parts of the revolution, a period known as the Reign of Terror.
And that really is the big question, isn't it? How does a revolution that starts with these amazing ideals of freedom and rights for everyone somehow spirals into a period where the government is executing thousands of its own people? I mean, how do you get from a declaration of rights to the guillotine? Let's dig in.
All right, so let's get our bearings. The year is 1793. France has just become a republic, which is a huge deal. But things are not going well. I mean, they're in deep trouble. You've got powerful kingdoms all over Europe declaring war on them, trying to stamp out this whole revolution thing. And then, inside France itself, there are massive rebellions. So you can just imagine the atmosphere. It's pure crisis and paranoia.
So, with everything on the brink of collapse, the leaders of the revolution make this, frankly, terrifying decision. They basically say the only way we're going to save this thing is to get tough, really tough. And they decided to make terror the official policy of the government. Yeah, you heard that right. They were going to use fear deliberately to crush anyone who got in their way.
Okay, but how do you actually do that? I mean, how do you make fear an official government tool? Well, they created a few new, very powerful institutions designed to do just that. Let's take a look at the actual machinery they built to run this whole reign of terror. So first, you have something called the Committee of Public Safety. And honestly, you can think of this as the absolute engine of the terror. It was just a small group, 12 men, but they had almost total power. We're talking military, police, courts, everything. They'd meet in secret and basically decide who was an enemy of the revolution. It was this tiny secretive group running the whole country. Then, to give that committee teeth, they passed something called the Law of Suspects. And what made this law so scary was just how vague it was. You could literally be arrested for your words or your actions. What does that even mean, right? It could mean anything. Maybe you didn't cheer loud enough at a parade. Or maybe you said the wrong thing to the wrong person. Suddenly, you're a suspect. And as you can guess, the prisons in Paris started filling up. Fast. And if you got arrested, you'd end up in front of a revolutionary tribunal. Now, you need to forget everything you know about a normal court. These places were built for one thing: speed, not justice. You often didn't get a lawyer, you didn't really get to see evidence against you, and the trial really only had two outcomes. You either acquitted, let go, or you were sentenced to death. That's it. These weren't courts of law, they were tools for getting rid of political enemies.
So with all this machinery of terror in place, daily life in France, especially in Paris, completely changed. Fear was just everywhere. And it had a very specific, very terrifying new symbol.
And that symbol was the guillotine. It stands about 14 feet tall. And the wild thing is, at the time, it was considered this great invention of the Enlightenment. It was supposed to be scientific, efficient, even humane. And in a really strange way, it was a symbol of equality. Because whether you were a king or a baker, you got the same quick, mechanical.
And they used this machine on everybody, starting right at the top. In January of 1793, they executed King Louis XVI. Just like that. 1,000 years of monarchy gone. A few months later, in October, his wife, Queen Marie Antoinette, met the same fate. Can you imagine the message that sent? If the king and queen can be executed, absolutely no one is safe.
I mean, just try to picture what it was like walking around Paris back then. For one, there were major bread shortages, so people were hungry. Government spies were everywhere, so you had to watch every single word you said. You were forced to wear revolutionary symbols just to prove you're on the right side. And then, you'd hear it. The sound of the wooden carts, they were called tumbrils, rumbling down the street, carrying that day's prisoners to the guillotine. It must have been this really strange mix of patriotic fervor and just constant silent dread.
Now, if there's one name you need to know from this period, it's Maximilien Robespierre. He was one of the leaders of the Committee of Public Safety, and for a while, he was pretty much the most powerful man in France. He was the architect of the terror. But as you're about to see, the brutal system he built was about to turn on him.
See, Robespierre had this grand vision for France. He wanted to create what he called a republic of virtue, a place where every single citizen was moral and totally devoted to the common good. But he took it to some really strange extremes. For example, he tried to get rid of Catholicism and replace it with his own new religion, the cult of the Supreme Being. And that move, well, it really backfired. His own colleagues started to think, okay, this guy is losing it. He's trying to become a dictator.
And this really gets to the heart of how he justified all of this. He had this famous idea that virtue on its own is powerless. It needs terror to back it up. So in his mind, the only way to build this perfect moral republic was to use extreme, brutal violence to get rid of anyone who wasn't on board. It's this core contradiction, using terror to create virtue, that really fueled the whole thing.
But eventually, even Robespierre's own allies got scared. They started to think, hey, if he's purging everyone else, it's only a matter of time before he comes for us. So they turned on him. On July 27, 1794, they had him arrested. He was declared an outlaw, and in the ultimate twist of fate, the very next day, he was executed by the guillotine without a trial. The system he created, in the end, consumed him, and his death pretty much marks the end of the Reign of Terror.
All right, so Robespierre is gone, and the daily executions finally start to slow down. So what was the final cost? What's the legacy of this incredibly brutal period?
Well, let's just start with the official numbers, which are staggering. The revolutionary tribunals officially sentenced about 17,000 people to death. 17,000. To put that in perspective, that's like 40 people a day, every day for over a year, all executed by their own government.
But even that huge number doesn't tell the whole story. Not even close. You had thousands more people dying of disease in these disgusting, overcrowded prisons. And that was just in Paris. Out in the rest of France, there were brutal civil wars where government forces crushed rebellions with mass executions. We're talking tens of thousands more people. So the real death toll is just way, way higher.
And that's why, even today, the Reign of Terror serves as this really powerful warning. It's a lesson about what can happen when a government decides that security is more important than the rights of its own citizens. It shows us how even the best ideals can become twisted and dangerous when they're taken to a violent, paranoid extreme.
Which kind of brings us back to where we started, and it leaves us with a really tough question. The people who ran the terror, guys like Robespierre, they truly believed they were doing the right thing. They thought they were saving the revolution, building a better world. But they ended up creating an absolute nightmare. And it forces us to ask ourselves, how much power is too much power, even when you think you're fighting for a good cause? At what point do the methods you use destroy the very thing you're trying to build? It's a question history keeps asking, and we're still grappling with the answer today.